Okay, you stalwarts who have stayed. What's going on with your practice? And what would you like to talk about? Marcy.
Thanks for the teaching this morning.
You're welcome.
All right, there we go. Thank you
go.
for the teaching this morning. Speaking of suffering, I've been wondering between the suffering of suffering and the suffering of change. And I'm wondering if, so I'm trying to grasp this, and I know like the suffering of change is supposed to be a very subtle awareness that I probably don't have, but is all emotional pain always suffering of suffering? Because sometimes I think of moments where I'm doing something that's real happy or joyous, like with my family or what have you, and then there's this tinge of underlying sadness about the impermanence of it. Mm-hmm. But that still feels like emotional pain, almost like attachment, or I don't know. So I'm just wondering if you could add, I don't know, if you could say something about the suffering of change. It's hard for me to grasp.
Yeah. I was meditating about that while I was trying not to meditate about a bunch of thoughts. But after what I said, I was thinking a bit about the suffering of change. So let's back up and get everybody in the same ballpark. So first noble truth, suffering is, and then the teachings are 3 types of suffering. So there's the suffering of suffering, that's the ouch kind of suffering, mental or physical, okay? This is painful. You stub your toe, it hurts. You're craving something like crazy, it hurts. Or anger hurts, right? Okay. Then that's the suffering of suffering. Suffering of change, as Marcy said so well, it's a little harder to get a hold of because we call it pleasure. We literally name it pleasure. And what is the suffering and pleasure? You were talking about it. The minute that we have some, almost always we're unable, because of our ignorance, to simply let it be what it is. We start grabbing, even subtle grabbing. And the message is something like, I hope this never ends. We might not even say that to ourselves, but we have that. I don't want this to end. Oh, this is so good. The other way we get to see it is we try and repeat it. That's a really good way to look at it. Like my friend and I took him out to dinner for his birthday, and we just had such a lovely time in this patio of a Mexican restaurant, and it was warm, and the food was terrific, and so I was thinking, for another friend wanted to take me for a birthday dinner, I want to go there and have that experience. And then I caught myself and went, it's fine to go. It will not be that experience. So that even the pleasure, do you get it? You have something niggling in there, right? Or another way suffering of change can be seen is, this is really good, but it could be just a little better if I just add 2 more grains of salt, or I just, up the music a little, or if that person would just say this, you can feel it. I'm acting it out here. Already it's totally uncomfortable. Even as I'm acting it out, I can feel some anxiety comes in. I want to control this. I want to make it better. More pleasure, more pleasure. This is the basis of pornography, by the way, what that hook is, sexual addiction, along with other addictions, which just start with some sense of pleasure and just go into hell realm, hungry ghost hell realm. So suffering of change. And the third one's even more subtle. It's the all-pervasive suffering of having a human existence. Only Buddhism kind of teaches this one, which is as soon as our minds take on a human existence, which in the Buddhist teachings, that's what we have done. It's not like just, oh, I was innocent. I have nothing to do with it. Our craving minds, our aversive minds, our ignorant minds take on this type of existence, and we immediately begin uncontrolled aging from the moment of conception. Uncontrolled is the important word. We think we have control over this. We so don't. I cannot stop my aging for 1 nanosecond. I don't know if I would. I don't think I would, but because I don't want to be around here forever. No offense. I love you all, but Buddha has promised better things. Where I got lost there. Suffering of aging begins immediately. That's a part of the all-pervasive suffering. Uncontrolled sickness comes with the pervasion of having a body. I was sick for the last 7 days or so, and I didn't choose that. I didn't know which day I'm getting better. I didn't know if I could be here this morning. I had to cancel class for yesterday because I didn't have the energy to prep for it or deliver it. And you know that. You've all been sick, right? And so aging, sickness, and the biggie, we're dying, folks. Nobody's getting out of here alive, as they say. Buddhist joke. No one's getting out of here alive. Like a bank robber says. And the Buddhist just cracks up, like, yeah, kind of knew that. But we kind of don't know it because we don't think about it most days. If I really thought I could die any day, I think I would act somewhat different than I do. Think about that for a minute. If you knew you were going to die tomorrow, how would you spend today? And if you can say to yourself, I would do just what I'm doing, good on you. That means you've probably simplified your life and you're paying attention to the generosity, patience, ethics practices. Good. It's a peaceful mind. But most people don't have that. So that's the all-pervasive. But back to the suffering of change. It's subtle, but it's not subtle. As we wake up, it doesn't seem so subtle. You already demonstrated quite a bit of awareness about it when you said, you're enjoying something with your family, and there's something going on under there that is not quite happy, right? Yeah. That's it. Every time I talk about these 3 types of suffering, Geshe Lindop Zopa comes to my mind. He was a teacher of my teacher, Venerable Chidren, and also a debate master of the current Dalai Lama. And I had the pleasure of big old Geshe Zopa, this marvelous being. He died a couple years ago. of hearing him talk about these three sufferings. And he had this big, deep voice, and he would say, well, it's like this. And he said, you start walking, and you enjoy walking, and you walk, and you walk, and you walk, and you don't enjoy walking. And now you sit down because you're tired, and you enjoy sitting. But you sit, and you sit, and you sit, and you don't enjoy sitting. And you get up, and you start walking. And when he did that, I saw, oh my God, that's the suffering of change. The suffering of sitting, the suffering of walking, they're built right in. The suffering's built in. By their nature, they're going to wear out and become unpleasant. Now, when it first starts, we don't think that. I'm in love. I'm in love. It's so great. And then I did about 20 years of divorce mediations, and right around 2 years was one of the times we would statistically look. Around 2 years, a lot of marriages go, you know, and they're in mediation. Some of them are able to keep the marriage, some not. And then again, around the time the kids all leave home, if they've had kids, there's a big shift at that time for a lot of people. But, you know, that initial what you fell in love with, well, first of all, it wasn't there. You were making a fantasy. We fall in love with our fantasies. Then we have to work with the real person. That's the real love. That's the real loving kindness, patience, etc., working with the real person. So that's what it is. And what's hard about it, for me right now as a practitioner, is it bums me out. Because it's like, really? So is it all suffering then? And the answer is yes. From a Buddhist point of view, as long as we're ignorant, it's all suffering. So what are we ignorant of? We're ignorant of how things exist. The appearance of this flower, see, it's gorgeous. It's empty of flower. There's nothing in there. So if I know that, even intellectually, as this dies, I don't have a problem. But if I start clinging, wow, there's a mandala in there. It's so fantastic. Look at that color. It's kind of sunset. I can start clinging, and I don't want it to change and go. Then I'm out of sync with reality. That's a really good way to describe our suffering, out of sync with reality. We go out of sync with it, and we start clinging and trying to keep something, or we start pushing away. You know, my elder brother's very, very sick, and I just want to push it away so much. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to be with him. I don't like it, you know. And then I see the moments I can actually get to some acceptance. There's no problem. I'm so happy I've had time with this brother. All the goodness we've shared, I'm so grateful for. And yeah, he's 87. He's going, you know, in his own way. And when I can get to an accepting place, there's no problem. It's natural. It's natural. Does that help?
Yeah, I just have a little follow-up.
Yeah, please.
So the acceptance that you're talking about, or So then, because I immediately went to, you said everything is suffering, and then I immediately went to the aphorism of the 7-point mind training that says, always keep a joyful mind, or something like that.
Yeah.
So how do we keep a joyful mind?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Remember the
Sorry,
quote?
I'm bombarding.
Okay, I'm going back to my quote. Live in joy and freedom, even among those who are sick or troubled. Live in joy and a peaceful heart, even among those in conflict. Quiet the mind and heart, and find the sweet joy of living in the Dharma. So it's in the last sentence, the joy of living in the Dharma. So the bottom level of the Dharma, every single practice, all the deity practices, all the mind training, what's it aiming for? Understand reality as it is. Oh, a petal fell off. Oh no, it's already happening. Understand reality as it is. It's just flowing. And when we know that, that's where the joy comes from. It's not the kind of excited joy. It's quiet, peaceful joy. I know you've seen some really authentic teachers of the Dharma. Not speaking of myself, I just come and do what my teachers have told me, and I try to stick with only what they've told me. But really authentic teachers, the Dalai Lama, Khenpo Lodro Donyo, Bokar Rinpoche, those folks live in that view. It all has to do with view. What's the Buddhist view of the world? When we can live in the view, the joy is there, because we're not opposed to impermanence. We're not opposed to any emotional state that rises. We're not opposed to it. Anger comes up. So what? Of course it's going to come up. My mind's been training in it for eons. The point is, what am I going to do with it now? And the joy of being able to see that and use tools and work my way out, that's amazing joy. Isn't it? We don't rejoice enough in what the Dharma gives us and what we do with it. Someone at the break just told me about working with a friend and not getting hooked when the friend said something really, really real critical. And then the joy of not getting hooked and just saying, I'm sorry that landed on you that way. I didn't mean that. And it all just melted. That's incredible. How often that does not happen in our world. See, we do really amazing things with our Dharma and we don't notice it. I don't know, we keep kind of grinding away. I'm talking about myself, but and forget to celebrate. That's the joy. Yeah, Linda?
When Khenpo Lodro Donyo Rinpoche was here most recently, Tim, as board president, and I, as assistant president, we got to have a meal with him while he was here. And we were told, you can ask him one question. Think ahead what you want to ask him. Okay. So we had Tim and I had quite a examination of, oh my God, we get one chance. And should it be something about how the board should work or KCC or something like that? But what we really came to was the same question that Marcy just asked, which was about, I think it's really related anyway, because Tim has children and he loves them with his whole entire being, and he's very clear that he would give his life for them with no question if it came to that. And I have a thing about beauty, and I work for the ballet because of that, and I'm terribly motivated in my life by flowers and actual beauty. And we were both hearing in these frequent teachings about emptiness and suffering and so on that that's not okay. To, love your children like that, or to love anybody like that, or to love beauty or anything about actual life. So we thought, we'll ask him if this is okay or not. So he sat there and he listened to the question, and Tim and I were like, oh, this is going to be a long, complicated answer. What's he going to say? And he looked at Lama Eric, and who was translating, and he said about 3 words. And Lama Eric said, no problem with all this joy and all this love, but everything must be within all this joy and all this love. Everything.
Yeah.
And that's,
nice.
It was just like, oh.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because there is this mistaken view that the Dharma is asking us to be miserable. To be dire. And as my one teacher said, if you come to that conclusion somewhere along there, you've taken a wrong turn. The Buddha would never want us to be anything but happy. But the happiness needs to be, or actually the happiness comes from the view that is consonant with reality, which is incredible interdependence. Everything, as Khenpo Lodro Donyo says, is within that love, beauty, etc. And within the view that it's completely ephemeral. It is so ephemeral. Think about it for 1 nanosecond. Can you guarantee what's going to happen at 10:45 in 7 minutes? Can you? No. We have no idea, but we run around acting like, I know exactly what's going to happen. I know what's going to happen, and the more we get I know, the more we're going to suffer when it doesn't go that way. The ego gets very, very frightened of this. I mean, I say it, and right away part of me is going, no, I'm going to make sure this and that happens. Good luck. It's groundless. You know that, many of you have probably read that word in Buddhism. It's groundless. What did my one teacher say recently? Well, we're falling all the time. And I was almost like, grab on, and there's the reaction. We're just falling all the time. What is falling? That self that we have created, made very concrete. But what's it made up of? One of the best quick meditations is say, who's Zopa? Let's really look. Look at yourself. What are you made up of? Bones. Is that you? Your skeleton? Everybody here has a skeleton, or else you can't even sit up, right? So you got bones. Do you think of yourself as my bones are Zopa? No. Your flesh, your blood, your guts, all your organs, is that? There's a classic meditation, lay that all out. Lay your bones out, lay your muscles out, lay your veins out, lay your brain out, lay all the organs out in a room. That's what this body is. And even Western science will tell you, when you look at each part of that, you can't find the essence. They're still looking for that partless particle. They haven't found it yet. They keep having new theories, right? String theory and this theory and that theory. They won't, according to Buddhism, they won't find it because it doesn't exist. So there's the body. What else does a person have? A mind. So find your mind. I'm not talking brain. We already laid the brain out. That's an organ. It's a physical organ. the mind, find the mind, which means thoughts, emotions, analysis, your ability to be aware. Seems to be, when you look very deeply, ephemeral. Doesn't have physical content. Does love have physical content? Some scientists say, oh, it's a bunch of different chemicals going across synapses in the brain. But is love in there? Is a thought in there? So far, they haven't been able to show a thought. So those go by like this, right? Person has body, person has thoughts. They're going like this. You can't even really cling to a thought for very long, right? If I say elephant, only think elephant. Don't think anything else. Just elephant, elephant, elephant. You might be able to do it for a minute or something, but then something else comes in, right? Some giraffe wanders in from the side, or what you want for lunch, start showing up. But so thought, well, emotions, we're made up of emotions. How fast do those come and go? That's a person. A body that's changing all the time, made up of parts. Thoughts changing all the time. Emotions changing all the time. Then we stick a label on it, Alan. And every time I see this set of aggregates, the Buddhists call it set of aggregates, an aggregated set. I think it's Alan, and I think he hasn't changed. That's what's hilarious. I think he's the same Alan that I saw 2 weeks ago. How could that be true? He's had all kinds of experiences, and his body has shifted, but we stick that label on and we just fixate. And then when someone does something, we even have words out of character. What character? Who made the character up? Right? This is the kind of meditations towards this emptiness, open, unobstructed way that reality actually is. Unobstructed, endless potential. It opens to endless potential. We are so not stuck. We can become Buddhas, which is kind of a funny way to say it. We can actually realize our Buddha nature because of that open, unobstructed way that things are, and they aren't the way they are and the way they aren't. Yeah. I don't know, that's what they teach. That's what they told me. Seems to be true, seems to make more sense than, it's all pretty solid, and I got to watch out for me and mine, me and my family. That was a long answer. I don't even remember the question. Anybody else got something?
This all feels so abstract to me.
What
and
is the self?
The whole conversation. When Khenpo Lodro Donya Rinpoche was here a year ago, we on the way to SCOL, we had this excursion planned at Wildwood. Remember this? Miriam helped me with this. And I was supposed to plan this trip, and we were going to have a picnic there at Wildwood. And I was in absolute panic about this. Everything had to go right, And there are trails there, and you can get kind of messed up, but it's a beautiful place right on the way. And, Miriam, I was totally in a freak out. She had to go tearing through the woods, try to find the right place for us to put the picnic. And the thing about somebody like him, that people will sometimes, when a teacher is coming, say, I don't feel like I'm advanced enough to go to the teachings or something like that. for me, which I totally feel, but for me, just to be around somebody with that lifetime of realized practice, it was completely irrelevant to him. Any of the concerns, he had never seen trees like those giant fir and cedar there, and he was so open to everything. And just the contrast of my to his presence is more instructive sometimes than all the talking.
Yes.
To see what happens to a person after that much practice and that many lifetimes of being there. It's a kind of maybe the difference between intellectual knowing and actual experience.
Yeah.
But when I get really some of this emptiness talk, I just what are you talking about? But then when you're around somebody, it's a whole different thing.
Yeah, so you're pointing at so many important things there. One of them is we're all going to come into the Dharma in different ways. I came in through the intellect, and study has been exceedingly important for me. And that's why I ended up with the Gelupas, who study. So I've read some amazing books on emptiness, which for me gave me a foundation to have the experience and recognize it. I don't mean I've had an experience of emptiness, I'm not claiming that, but to aim toward it and to aim towards some realization. Other people are going to come in and they aren't going to, it's going to be all much more experiential. The experience and the study are Venn diagram, they cross over. Every single Buddhist group, lineage, tradition will say the way to approach the Dharma is 3. Study. Now, study can be hearing. You're hearing right now. This is included in study. It doesn't just mean get a book out. Study, contemplate. So how does it fit in my mind? So when you see Khenpo Lodro Donyo, you go, wow, look at me running around like a squirrel or whatever. And he's just in joy. And talk about joy, because he's just there. No expectations, no hopes, no fears. He's just being there. And you get to see that and experience it. That's really cool. So study, contemplate. You have to think. You have to see. Me, him. That's contemplation. And then meditate, of course, on and off the cushion toward that experience, like we were doing this morning. Recognize the past is past. Recognize the future isn't here. Just that is a profound realization. I want to tell another story because it's very much like yours. Venerable Thubten Chödrön, when she was really young and she was in Nepal with Lama Zopa Rinpoche, she just is a very devout student and teacher, but she was to the extreme, of course, like we get on that front end of the Dharma, like I'm going to be the most devout and the most this. And Lama Zopa was doing some teachings many hours of the day and well into the night, but he had asked her to lead a group of Westerners in addition to the teachings attending his. And she was just in a turmoil. She tells this story on herself about, how can I do it both? I want to stay up and be with him, and then I'm going to prep for these people. And she just got herself in this total turmoil, and she got so tired she missed part of his teaching. And she went in the next day just bowing and apologizing to him. Lama, I'm so sorry I missed the teachings. Lama, I'm in despair because I missed the teachings, and all excuses, like I had to do this and I had to do that. And he just kept smiling at her, and he'd say, would you like some tea? And then she'd think, oh, he didn't get it. I'm really apologizing. And she'd go on some more, and then he'd say, would you get that book for me? And he just kept, she finally got it through just what he was showing, not what he was saying, that it was irrelevant It's gone. It's past. It's done. Let go. And he didn't say that. He just showed it. We're moving right along here. So we all have to, we will all see as we practice, what's my way in? What's my, my most familiar way? And by the way, it might change. I mean, for 20 years, I followed Golubka very much, study and serve, study and serve, study and serve. Lots of meditation too, but not such a focus on shamatha or insight, because the Golubkas think that the insight meditations, even the shine with no object, calm abiding with no object, are very advanced practices. So they assume you're not ready. For decades, you're not ready. What happened in my life was I was with Venerable Chidren serving and study text. And then something just rose up one day, and I just felt like I need to go sit somewhere in silence. I don't even know where that's coming from, but I just can't do another text. And right around that time, the one-year retreat was offered here. So that's how I ended up here. So you don't know. But it's very helpful to do a bit of all three: study, contemplate, meditate. And there's no need to think one is better than the other, just to figure out for yourself what's the most helpful. And to watch out for the ditches. The one ditch is, I don't study anything because I just want to experience. I just love experience. I've talked to some students like that and basically say it'd be really good to at least read one book where there's an overview. So you have a blueprint, or to get like I was of study, and you get so many words, your mind is going like that. And at some point, you've got to realize that's not it. Not by itself. It's a great foundation. all the traditions agree that experience is the ultimate goal. It has to be experiential, experiencing the groundlessness, experiencing the Buddha nature, experiencing the boundless open potential. That's the goal. But how we will get there, everybody will do it a little different, and that's fine. And we're doing it right now. This is it.
So I was a little reluctant to say anything because there's only 5 minutes left. But a recurring issue for me, and it sort of arose from this suffering of suffering conversation, is what is the point of that? What's the point of that discussion? I mean, I to say that sort of much of the joy that I experience that is contingent on causes and conditions, identity, my illusion of who my son is, the way you described Alan. In all of that delusion is a lot of love and joy and
yes,
amazing experience. And I mean, there's a lot of suffering too, but just to get into that granular first noble truth, life is suffering, seems really negative to me. In a way that I can't relate to. Yeah. Or that I don't find inspiring.
Yeah.
So is it
frustrating? Is it disturbing? Is it discouraging?
It just seems to negate a lot of joy. I mean, if I have to, it's saying that whatever joy you're taking out of this, or whatever, that it's all delusional. This is a myth. Your happy experience, and you have to transcend that.
Okay, and what would be wrong with that? It doesn't take the joy. Or let me. This is so important. I'm really glad that you were honest enough to just put that out there, because I think it's the experience of a lot of us, including me. As I said, I can feel quite discouraged with this, The joy is also impermanent, right? That doesn't take anything away from it, does it? Okay, so that I think is the core of what we're looking at. No one is saying don't have joy, but all the teachers are saying see the true nature of it. No one is saying don't have love, but see the deeper nature of it, or you'll continue to suffer. That's the clearest I can say. And, I think what you're bringing up, John, is the core for most of us of how hard it is, how difficult it is to go deeper in the teachings, because it brings up a lot for us. But no, do not let go of any beauty and joy of your family, your son, your life. In fact, embrace it totally. And know it is impermanent, deeply impermanent, so that the suffering in it is undercut. So it's a confusion of, we're not undercutting the joy, we're undercutting the suffering of the clinging to the joy, or the suffering of ascribing some kind of permanence to it that it does not have. Say more.
Well, I relate to that and the sort of suffering of change, and sort of acknowledging grasping or attachment. It was that last deep level of like the suffering of just sheer human existence. It just, I mean, I understand everything you say, and a lot of that I find inspiring, but there seems to be this deeper level that I cannot relate to.
Yeah, don't then. And I came to my teacher with the same kind of questions, and she said, whatever you can't relate to, the Buddha said, don't try to relate to. Take my teachings and put them in your life. This is what the Buddha said, and it was one of the things that really drew me to this path, because unlike, say, the Catholicism I grew up with, that it was like, this is how it is, or you're out of here. The Buddha said, take it, test it like gold, chew it, burn it, pound it, make sure it's gold. And the only way you can know that is your own experience with it. And that's where you work. And teachings that that stir up a whole lot in us, or that seem not helpful, put them over here. And just on the back burner, you don't have to say, and I didn't hear you saying they're wrong or whatever. You're saying does not work for me, feels disturbing. What's the point of it? It bumps me out totally, But for someone else here, at least for me, and maybe someone else, to look at the idea that it is all suffering, even the joy, I don't know if that's a good word. It is all suffering because of the way I approach it. It's more the approach. That's helpful to me. But doesn't work? Fine. Does that help? Yeah. And the other thing is, I know you've practiced enough to also take a little time gently to look at reaction and say, what is that in me? Not that you're going to try and get rid of it, not that you're going to try and agree to anything, but what came up there? Something came up very strong. And I think what I try to do with those, because they do come up for me, come up for everybody who practices at some point or other, is I go to what Lama Michael said, everything that shows up is a teaching. My reactions, I can turn those into teaching me. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, what's going on for me with that? Not again so that you'll agree to the tenets or something, or else you're excommunicated, but just for your own edification. What's going on for me there and why? And that can help lead us to more joy, actually. I find that the more I understand, even on the tiniest level, the impermanence of things, the more I actually enjoy them. Like this moment will never come again. And Lama Michael's been saying that over and over. This moment will never come again. And I've been enjoying that so much with people. Like this moment right here won't ever come again. When I know that with you, something shifts to something more just totally delightful, is all I can say. Totally meaningful. Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Need to dedicate.
By this virtue may I quickly realize Mahamudra and establish all beings without exception in this state.
Thank you. See you this week at some one of the things. Come back.